Hi, my name is Christy. Have you ever had a lot of money in your hands? Maybe you received a large inheritance or a gift from rich relatives? This happened to me. I became rich at 15 years old. Watch this video to the end and you will learn what difficulties come with wealth and how to deal with them. It so happened that I never knew my parents. Since I was a baby, I was raised in an orphanage. I was lucky. We had very kind teachers and good kids. We were all one close-knit family. When someone was picked up, which was very rare, we all got very bored and, if possible, continued to communicate. I lived in this place for 15 years, and I didn't even think about the possibility that someone might adopt me. But one day, a rich married couple came to us. They could not have children and wanted to take a child from the orphanage. Moreover, they wanted to take an older child to avoid the worries associated with young children. So their choice fell on me. I met with them, and it seemed to me that they were good people. And besides, they were also very rich, which meant that I would live in comfort. A couple of weeks later, I moved into their house. It was a huge 3-story cottage in the center of our city. I got my own huge room, a computer, a game console, and delicious food. I was also given large amounts of pocket money. I was so thrilled. Have you ever had a situation where you suddenly got everything you wanted? However, as time went on, I began to realize that things were not as smooth as I thought. At some point, they started talking to me in an irritated and cold way. If I did something wrong, they would start swearing at me, accusing me of being careless. At first, I thought it would pass with time, but the number of claims only increased. I was tired of putting up with it, so I decided to ask what it was all about. At dinner that night, I told them that I had noticed how often they were angry with me, and I wanted to find out what was wrong. They started saying that everything was fine, but I was not satisfied with this answer. I told them it would be better for everyone if we discussed it. But they were only more angry at my words. After another question, my father flared up and launched into a tirade about how bad I was behaving. My mother supported his every word. After another argument, they took away my pocket money and sent me to my room. I pretended to obey, and then I slipped out of the house to meet my friend from the orphanage named Robin. We agreed that we would meet in the city park. When we met, he said that he had bad news. The orphanage was running out of money. The city's funding was not enough, and if this went on, the orphanage would be closed. I asked what would happen to the kids. Robin replied that they would be distributed to other orphanages in the nearest cities. This was terrible. All the kids were so attached to each other, it would hurt them very much if they were separated. In addition, it was not known whether house mothers in other orphanages were as kind as we had. I promised Robin that I would try to help the orphanage in any way I could. The next day, I went to my foster father and told him about the orphanage situation. I hoped that he, being rich enough, would help the orphanage where I grew up. My father understood me completely wrong. He started accusing me of getting money out of him and that I didn't understand how hard it was for him to get it. As a result, he forbade me to see the children from the orphanage, saying that this would prevent me from becoming a full member of society. I was upset, but I didn't give up. I started thinking about how else I could help the orphanage. I decided to go to work, but there was a problem. All the ads that I watched were looking for people not under the age of 16. Finally, I came across an ad for a leaflet distributor that didn't specify the minimum age. I called them, and they took me right away. I started going to work every day after school. They didn't pay much, but I had to do something. What would you be willing to work 6 hours after each school day for? One day, I saw 2 men. I recognized them as friends of my foster parents. They just waved and walked past me, and I didn't even care. However, a couple of days later, my mother was not home. and my foster father called me over. He was tense and stern. His friends told him that I was handing out leaflets, and he didn't like it very much. He said that I should not waste time on such nonsense and study economics and business theory instead, so that in the future I could take over his business. He didn't even ask me what I wanted to do. He had already decided everything for me. I got mad at him and told him what I thought. I told him that he was doing nothing to me and had no right to tell me what to do. It made him mad. He started shouting at me, accusing me of being ungrateful and saying that I had to listen to him because I was his daughter. I wasn't going to bend, so I answered him. I called him a greedy, violent lunatic who would never be my father. At that moment, I got a slap in the face. My father, who had slapped me, stood panting, his face red with anger. I was in so much pain, not physically, but mentally, that I started to cry. He also demanded that I didn't tell anyone about it, threatening to ruin my life if I did. He said that with his connections, he could easily put me in jail or deprive me of the opportunity to get a normal job. He left, and I went back to my room, crying and trembling with fear. I realized I couldn't stay here any longer. I packed my things at night. But before I left, I had an idea. I thought that my foster father was really a scoundrel, and it would be all right if I took some money from him to take it to the orphanage. I crept into my parents' bedroom and, very quietly, so as to not wake anyone, found his wallet in his bag. Soon I reached the orphanage. I went to the house mother and told her everything that happened. She was shocked and very worried about me. She allowed me to stay at the orphanage despite the fact that she could have problems. I thanked her and gave her the money I had taken from my father. I lied about earning it though. I went to bed, and in the morning I woke up to some screams outside the door. I looked out and saw my father and several police officers, and the house mother was standing in front of them. My father noticed me and pulled me out of the room. He said I would go with him, but I resisted. I broke free and ran away from him to the house mother. The father began to threaten that he would charge the house mother with child abduction, and the police would be on his side. I was terrified. I couldn't figure out if my foster mom knew what he was doing. But I didn't want the house mother to have any problems, so I agreed to go with my father. However, I had a plan. My father was silent all the way home, but I knew I was going to get a lot of trouble at home. He probably noticed the money was missing, and I didn't think he was going to let me get away with it. There was only one thing I needed to do. When we got home, I jumped out of the car and ran quickly to my room. I heard my father following me. I quickly took out my phone, turned on the camera, and put it in an inconspicuous place. Then my father came into the room. Without saying a word, he hit me in the face and then started screaming. I had never been so humiliated. He called me a thief and a bastard. Then he hit me a few more times and left. I was hurt, but I was glad. There was evidence on my phone that he was hitting me. I didn't care about his threats. I was going to sit back. I went to the police and showed them the tape. No amount of connections helped the father avoid being punished for child abuse. He and my mother were deprived of custody of me and forced to pay me monetary compensation. At the trial, I felt sorry for my mother. She didn't seem to know that my father was hitting me, and she was sad that everything had turned out this way. Before this situation, I thought that if I had a lot of money, I would be happier. But now I realize that even with a lot of money, you can be unhappy and angry. I was happy to return to the orphanage, and the compensation my father paid was enough to fix the situation with its budget. Once in the orphanage, I began to appreciate the place even more and began to actively help with the housework and care for babies. Also, working as a promoter, I realized that it was time to think about my future profession, and I decided to devote myself to social work in order to give joy to those who found themselves in a difficult situation like me. If you like the story, subscribe to the channel and put a like, and click the bell icon. This way, you can be the first to watch new stories. All the best to you. Don't let the wealth pass you by.
Hi, I'm Zoe, and I'm 16 years old. Have you ever felt like an outcast in society? When you are shunned and even afraid of what would you do if you were bullied and laughed at because of your appearance? Watch this video to the end, and you will learn how to live with an ugly face. You rarely think about the fact that appearance can affect your life so much, especially when you like your own. Every day, I received compliments, and all the friends of my parents were touched by seeing me and cherished my beauty. After all, my mother is a cosmetologist, and my father is a plastic surgeon. And of course, people who create beauty had the most beautiful child. I was actively involved in cheerleading, was one of the most popular girls in school, and even ran for school president. I had a handsome boyfriend, David. Almost all the girls wanted to be me, and I enjoyed it. My life was just a fairy tale that ended after that day. I was driving to school with my boyfriend. We had fun chatting and not really watching the road. I never used a seatbelt because I thought that nothing bad would happen to me. But suddenly, a car flew out at us, and David lost control of his car. Suddenly, I felt a huge force that threw us to the side of the road. I felt the shards of glass bite into my face, and it felt numb. Have you ever been in an accident? Then you understand that I was in a state of shock at the time, so I don't remember much. My face was healing for a month, and I had to walk around with my head completely bandaged. I felt a daily cutting pain. Every day was unbearable. I thought it was the worst thing that could have happened to me in all the time, until my bandages were removed. For the first time since the accident, I went to the mirror to look at myself and felt a shock. The scars were so deep that they left terrible marks on my face, as if someone had just slashed me with a knife and left me like this. Because the skin was covered with scars, its color no longer perfectly even, but resembled burns, and the whole picture was completed by my no longer perfect nose with a hump, which could only be hidden by a burqa. Was it really me? No. I was looking at a completely different person. Now I looked like a real freak from a horror movie. The whole face was horribly scarred and marked. The eyebrows were disfigured and left in shreds, and the eyes were full of fright. It wasn't me anymore. There was no trace of the last beauty left. I came home and just locked myself in my room. I didn't go out for several days, and I didn't want to eat or drink. I broke all the mirrors in my room because I just couldn't look at myself. Tears stung my face because of recent wounds. I felt terrible. My sweet and beautiful face turned into this, and now I had to live with it. My parents tried to support me. I was scheduled for a hospital checkup in a week to see if I had any complications, so we tried to talk less about it. One evening, I overheard my dad talking on the phone with a doctor. He was talking about me. I couldn't stand it. I ran up to ask if there was anything I could do with my ugly face. My father promised me that he would do everything possible to get me back to normal. My dad knew a surgeon who could help me. I began to believe that I would be able to look at my reflection in the mirror again. But on my checkup, my hopes were dashed. The doctor said that even the smallest surgical interventions should not be performed now. Everything inside me collapsed. The sick day was almost over, and I had to go to school soon, which was my worst nightmare. I had already seen school children shy away from me, get scared, and call me names. No one saw me on sick day except my parents, but thousands of eyes would see me at school. When day X arrived, I wanted the ground to swallow me up just so that no one would notice me. As soon as I opened the school door, I realized that I was no one here anymore. My popularity was gone. David didn't even talk to me. And all my friends seemed to support me, but behind my back, they laughed and came up with the offensive nickname, Freddie. I huddled in the corner between the lockers and sobbed there. But one girl I used to bully came up to me and supported me. It was unexpected, so I just pushed her away and ran away. Each new day was even harder. I tried to apply a ton of makeup, but it didn't save my face, and the patches didn't help either. So I started covering my face with my hair, pushing it forward, putting on my hood, and slouching. But it didn't get any better. Everyone was laughing at me and calling me names. But that girl, she supported me, and over time, we started communicating. Her name was Sally. I didn't understand why she was doing this, but thanks to her, I began to smile more often. After a month, I had gradually gained confidence and began to pay less attention to the taunts from the outside. Did they ever laugh at you at school? Then you know exactly how I felt. I tried to continue to live my life, and it seemed like everyone around me had already got used to my appearance. It was easier for me. And then, everything was going downhill again. I was kicked out of the cheerleading team, told that my face scared people away. The boys on the football team refused to support me. It was a real stab in the back. I had been doing this for more than 2 years, and then I got kicked out. I was crushed. On the same day, I was banned from running for president of the school. As soon as I came to terms with the consequences of the accident and the ugly situation at school, I was broken again. I felt the injustice, but I couldn't do anything about it. I no longer tried to do anything to protect myself, as I did not feel the support of others. It became even harder for me to open up and trust people, so I became depressed. I started skipping school and closing myself in my room more and more often. And one of those days, someone knocked on my door. I opened it and saw a courier with a package, signed it, and started unpacking it. I didn't believe what I saw. It was a topical ointment against such damage on the face as mine. I was delighted and immediately smeared it all over my face. I thought the cream would definitely help me. When my dad arrived, I started to hug him and was happy, but he immediately explained that the ointment was experimental and there were no guarantees for the result. My hopes were dashed again. Was I just going to be ugly forever? I closed the door, went to the mirror, and, choking with tears and resentment, grabbed a piece of scissors and hysterically cut my hair in the bathroom. I decided that if my face always remained like this, at least the image would match. In the room, I found a black and red striped sweatshirt, found black pants and a hat, trying to look like the one whose nickname I was given. This time, I was ready to go to school. When I opened the school door, time seemed to stop in the corridor. Everyone was looking at me. Even though my new image looked terrible, that wasn't the reason. When I got closer to the election counters, I found my own, and behind it stood Sally, who was shouting slogans for me. I thought everyone was laughing at me again and abruptly started ripping flyers off the walls and throwing them in the trash. Sally tried to stop me, but I pushed her away and ran away crying. All eyes were on me. Sally caught up with me and began to calm me down. She explained everything to me. It turned out that all this time she was negotiating with the principal to allow me to participate in the elections, and he was outraged that I was forbidden to do so. The principal was shocked that I was treated this way, so everyone who voted for my removal was banned from participating in the election. I didn't believe it was real. They really supported me. 2 days ago, the election ended, and thanks to my knowledge and Sally's efforts, I was elected president. For a long time, I was really happy. Performing in front of large crowds helped me reduce my appearance. I don't know what will happen next, but I was happy to participate, and I think I started to feel the ground under my feet again. I try not to think about the accident and try to move on. Did you ever have any problems with your appearance? If so, write your story in the comments, put likes, subscribe to the channel, and have a nice day.
Hi, my name is Olivia and I'm 20 years old. Have you ever had to go through something so terrifying that it's hard to even think about it? 2 years ago, I got stuck in a trap underwater, absolutely alone. No parents, no friends, no ways of communicating. I spent a week on a sunken boat and almost lost my mind. You could say that it's the story of my second birth. Get comfortable because I'm gonna tell it to you. My dad is the captain of a cruise ship. All his life he was driving big boats. He really loved his job. He told me so much about cruise ships, and ever since I was 10, he'd take me on cruises with him. I really enjoyed it. When he was at sea for a long period of time, I'd miss him, and of course I missed the ocean. One day during his time off, Dad surprised me with awesome news. We're going on a cruise around Hawaii. And the most important thing was that now that I was old enough, I wasn't just going to be tagging along with him, but also work as a waitress in a ship's restaurant, just to fill in for a sick person. So it was a couple of days before the cruise, but I couldn't even fall asleep from all the excitement. I couldn't even put into words how happy I was. Have you ever been so excited before an important day that you couldn't even think about anything else? Mom was saying goodbye. I don't know why, but she was emotional and even started crying, hugging me before we left. Maybe she had feelings about something. I don't know. We were on a ship. It was giant and so gorgeous. It took my breath away when I was thinking about how powerful it was. We had a long journey in the Pacific Ocean ahead of us alongside my dad. I was on cloud 9. I shared my dream with Dad. I wanted to become a captain of a cruise ship just like him. There was only one woman captain in the world back then in the history of the USA. I wanted to be the second one. During the cruise, my dad turned 45 years old. Mom gave me a present for him. I got a genius idea. So I wanted to bake a cake for Dad and decorate it with a steering wheel design. And while all the co-workers were congratulating Dad in the concert hall, I quietly snuck into a galley. A galley is what the ship's kitchen is called if you didn't know. So, flour, sugar, and eggs needed to be creamed together in a mixer for the cake crust to be extra soft. All of a sudden, the galley shook so hard that I lost balance and fell down, hitting my head on the deck on the way down. I don't know how long I was unconscious for. I woke up almost in a complete darkness around me, besides red lights that were emitting a really weak light. I still haven't figured out what was going on and rushed to search for an exit, but both the doors were sealed shut, probably blocked off automatically. I realized I was trapped. I started to slowly realize that something awful had happened, but what exactly? I thought of the Titanic, but it wasn't the same case. We were in a warm ocean and there was no chance of iceberg collision. The ship probably just ran to the ground and there was an explosion on one of the sections. Judging by the sound, there was water rushing to the nearby compartments. It sounded like it was filling them up. I kind of knew there must have been a hull breach somewhere. That's why the compartment doors got automatically blocked. Was I trapped? I couldn't believe this was happening to me. I panicked. I was numb with fear. I couldn't move my limbs and could hardly breathe. I didn't smell any smoke, which meant that I wouldn't suffocate or drown or die from freezing ocean water. But if the ship was sinking, would anyone even find me in here? Hundreds of thoughts were running through my head. And of course I was thinking about my dad. Where is he? What was happening to him? Is he alive? Or, no, I didn't want to think that he might have drowned. Why did I decide to bake the same exact moment something had happened to the ship? With all my willpower, I made myself calm down. From my dad's words, I remembered that in every extreme situation, the most important thing is to stay calm in order to make correct decisions. I took a deep breath, counted until about 50, and made a decision. First of all, I needed to figure out what was going to help me survive, because I possibly could spend a lot of time in this trap before I got rescued. If I got rescued. I checked the pantry and fridge and made sure I had enough water and food so I wouldn't starve or die from thirst in the near future. The galley had a clock so that I could track time that went by. It went by very, very slowly. The first 24 hours I wasn't hungry, I only drank water. I tried screaming and banging on the shut door, but I lost my voice in a couple of hours and got exhausted. There was no way I was by myself here, and there couldn't be a single person nearby. I mean, come on. I wish someone would respond. I kept crying. Then I realized that my head was spinning from hunger. I realized I really needed to eat something in order to stay conscious. I opened a can of food. Bread was still fresh. I ate that. The food reminded me that just a short time ago I was surrounded by people, and I had bursted into tears again. I was desperate. When I got tired of bawling my eyes out, I remembered that Mom used to meditate and taught it to me. Meditation is a special exercise for your mind. It helps you relax and calm down your nerves. I closed my eyes, tried to breathe rhythmically, and only concentrated on my breathing. Not right away, but in a little while it seemed like my limbs became lighter. Head cleared up, and like in a dream, I saw my dad and my mom on the deck of the big ship. They were smiling, Mom hugged me, I was relieved. Nothing happened in the next few days. I still tried to stay positive. I meditated, tried singing, read food labels, counted time, did everything to distract myself. I slept curled up on top of the fridge, where I placed a chef's robe and apron. It was hard and uncomfortable. I kept thinking about my cozy bed and would start crying. I thought that if I could turn back time, I wished I'd be together with everyone else preparing Dad's surprise in the concert hall and not by myself. One day when I was asleep, I felt movement, like the cruise ship was sailing. What was it? Was I finally being rescued, or was it sinking? I listened again. What was that sound? Like the engine started working, but it wasn't as loud as usual. The sound was coming from far away. I could hear squeaks of the beams and hull nearby. I felt the rocking of the ship, like it started moving. And then silence again. No voices, steps, nothing. Nobody came to get me. Could you even imagine what an 18-year-old girl could be feeling completely isolated underwater for 7 days? I had 0 happy thoughts in my head. They ran out. I made myself eat and drink. Forced it. But in reality, I just wanted it to be over already. I didn't like fighting for my life anymore. I thought it would be better if I died, or otherwise I'd go crazy. And suddenly, on day 7, I heard new sounds. Was I going crazy? What was it? The beams were banging on each other again. No. These were some kind of new sounds. I couldn't believe my ears. Somewhere to the right of the galley, I heard knocking on the walls and doors. I'm here! I'm here! I screamed in a hoarse voice and started banging on the door again. I'm here! Help! There were people! Just a couple of steps away from me. I heard steps, voices. I knew it wasn't all in my head. They were looking for me. Was I finally being rescued? I couldn't be sleeping or hallucinating. The voice at the door yelled, Olivia, are you here? Yes, please help, I yelled back. Hold on, baby, he yelled. I heard a loud noise and realized the metal door was being cut open with some sort of tool. That sound was terrible. Some other time I would even call it unbearable. My legs turned into jelly. I feel like I was gonna faint. From relief. The moment I was freed from my underwater trap, and later when I had time to reflect on everything that happened, I came to an important conclusion. Never give up. There's always a way out, even in an underwater trap. Is there really a need to describe how happy I was to finally be freed and hug Mom and Dad? I was placed in a clinic for observation. The doctor said I had physical and emotional exhaustion and I needed to stay in the hospital for a couple of days. Later, I was told what happened by my parents. It turned out that while I was baking the cake, there was an explosion in one of the technical compartments of the ship, and the ship started taking in water. It quickly flooded the bow. After the SOS signal, the crew and the passengers started getting rescued into rafts. My dad aided in the rescue, and I was the last one to abandon the ship. But he didn't have any idea, of course, that I was trapped underwater. In order for the ship not to flip over, the bow was sunk. In that manner, it was towed to the nearest port. The tow, pretty mighty, was still way smaller than the ship. That's why the delivery took some time. So these explain the weird sounds that I heard on the 3rd day of my underwater prison. I got better soon, and Dad returned back to work on a new ship. This ordeal made him stronger, more experienced, and more careful. Despite what I had to go through, I haven't changed my mind about becoming a cruise ship captain, and I'm currently in the Naval Academy. My dreams are worth achieving. Click like under this story and subscribe to the channel to keep updated on all the interesting life stories like mine. Have a good day and keep your nose up in any situation. Hi, I'm Mandy. Have you ever heard a saying that winning fame is simple? You just have to risk everything? Well, I believed it and went through a bit of a hellish time, but here's the full story. I grew up on the outskirts of a small town. Real backwater, a school, couple of stores, police office, prairies about. My mom and dad had a farm. I think my family owned it since the times the dinosaurs roamed the earth. Family business, that was what was in stock for me after school. I wanted to break free, to leave this shabby town, to travel, to get famous. I helped Mom with her chickens and goats since I started walking and helped Dad with crops. My only outlet was my cousin's old guitar. So I graduated. By that time, I played pretty well and knew music sheets, and I thought this was my future. What was there for me as an agricultural major anyway? I decided that with a little cunning, I told my parents that I went to college and went straight for the city. That was my chance to become a musician. I never had a doubt about my potential. Have you ever left everything and moved away like that? As soon as I arrived, I rented a studio to record my first hit. I sent the recording to country producers and waited to wake up famous. A month went by and I didn't get a single reply. Perhaps solo country artists weren't the thing right now. I found another studio, recorded a song with a hired band, much better. Sent it out again. Yet another month went by and I started to run out of money. I wasn't able to pay even for the modest living any longer, and I had two choices. Go home and confess it all to my parents, or get out on the streets. Gosh, I'm such a dumb idiot. I chose the wrong way. I sang on the streets all day long and paid for a hostel with the meager money that I made from tips. When I made close to nothing, I had to sleep in the park. Music was no longer a pleasure for me. I almost hated my guitar. When I had to play hours on end in any weather, I did it just to scrape up a few bucks for food. Once a man approached me. He offered me a job in his bar for a very small wage, but promised me to get me a room to live in. I thought my dreams were coming true, but they didn't, of course. I was just serving drinks, doing dishes, mopping floors. He paid me $400 at the end of the month. But immediately I took $300 for rent. I realized I was a slave. I wasn't really forced into these conditions, but leaving meant going back onto the street. I lived like this for 2 months. In a couple of months, my boss hit on me. I said no, and he kicked me right out. That was the last straw. A guitar, a backpack, and a few bucks I spent on food. Nothing else. I realized it was time to go home. I'll just tell my parents I was kicked out of the university. I tried to make some money for the ticket home, next to the bus stop, but I was told that I'd have to pay a fine. I was in despair. I sat stupefied for the rest of the day. Closer to evening, I saw an elderly lady drop her wallet and not notice it. Here it was, my salvation. I jumped to grab the wallet and hid it under my sweatshirt, but seeing the old lady looking for her wallet to buy a ticket, I became ashamed. Did the city really turn me into a monster? From a country girl, I gave her back her wallet. She thanked me, gave me a few bucks. I cried in gratitude and the woman asked me what the matter was. I told her and she said, "Oh, silly you, call your parents right this minute." She even gave me her phone. They weren't mad at me. As soon as they learned I was on a bus station in the city with no money, they were so worried they couldn't even stay angry. I was so happy to hug them again. I was so ashamed that I stayed put for a few months, helped them around the farm, read books to enroll into an agriculture course for real right now. Then Mom found a few nameless CDs among my things, and I remembered the recordings and demos I made. They weren't bad at all. My parents liked them too, and suddenly I knew there's a small radio station in our town. I sent my CDs there, and I heard my songs on air that very evening. Our own singer in our town, our backwater town. That was big news for them. I never expected such feedback. The radio station was pelted with calls and emails, and they even invited me to be a guest at a talk show one evening. I talked about my adventures, and then kids from a neighboring town found me through the radio. They had their own band and were happy to ask me to sing with them. It's not like we're world famous or anything, but we get around and people know us. And if I learned something from my farm life, it's never give up on work. So we have a long way to go. I suppose with a bit of thinking, it's still possible to find yourself. Have your dreams ever come true in an unexpected way like mine? Please share your stories in comments below and subscribe to our channel to know when we post something new. Like our story if you're also into creativity and can relate to a country girl like me. Have a great day and may your creative experience be a positive one.
Hi, I'm Alexis and I'm 18 years old. Do you think it's difficult to manage 3 children? What if there are 4 or 6 of them? I have 10 children at the age of 18. Watch the video to the end and find out how it happened that I had a whole kindergarten. I fell in love with Benjamin at first sight, and the fact that he was already 15 years older than me didn't stop me at all. He was courting me, was so wise, courageous, and caring. My parents didn't accept my choice at first, but then they accepted it. He managed to charm them and was very serious about it. So we decided together that we would get married as soon as I turned 18. After my birthday, I was really looking forward to the moment when he would officially propose to me, but it didn't happen. Benjamin delayed the conversation because the outcome could be ambiguous, even to the point of breaking up the relationship. Indeed, it was very shocking to me. When he finally gave up, I found out something incredible. I knew he was already married, and I told him right away that I didn't care. It turned out at that time, I did not let him tell a very important detail. He had 5 children. 5! Benjamin promised that it wouldn't affect our marriage in any way. With his ex-wife, he separated peacefully, communicated with the children, visited them. Have you ever learned big secrets that shocked you? Write it in the comments. The admission stunned me. 5 children. He left the family, got a divorce. It took me a long time to come to my senses and understand. Benjamin tried to explain to me that he never gave up on children and did everything to ensure that they had a father and that they did not feel the need. He said it happened in life when a marriage couldn't be fixed. Children were better off if their parents lived separately, but were friends than together with scandals. It was not easy for me to accept all that was said, but love was stronger. I said I was ready to live with it, and very soon he proposed to me. It was very original. Friends and acquaintances involved me in a big flash mob in the final, of which I received a bouquet and a beautiful ring. The preparations for the wedding went very quickly. Benjamin took everything on himself and was in such a hurry. I guess he was afraid I'd change my mind. The celebration itself was held at home. There were only the closest relatives and friends. Unfortunately, not everyone reacted positively to my choice, but I did not need the approval of others. The main thing was that I loved him. We wanted to spend our honeymoon by the ocean, and I had already started packing my suitcase and managed to spread the news to all my friends. But Benjamin suddenly came in depressed with a face as black as a cloud and said that his ex-wife died. I threw my arms around him and began to cry. How could I comfort him, help him? But he roughly unclasped my hands and fell into a chair. In the next second, he said that he could not give the children to the adoption system. He would not forgive himself for this. I thought it was a dream, and now I would wake up and everything would be as before. But Benjamin's shoulders, shaking with tears, told me that I was not asleep. I was rebelling within myself and didn't want to take on this responsibility. But on the other hand, I promised at the altar that I would be with him, not only for better, but for worse. I agreed. Days of waiting passed. Children also needed comfort and coziness, and therefore the rooms should be prepared for their arrival. The tasks were not so simple. Where to find 5 children's beds inexpensively, how to place them, where to put a couple of cabinets, and what was there on the children's menu. The solution of these questions so fascinated me that I did not notice how several weeks flew by. But there were no children. Benjamin became a bit moody, irritable, and we started having conflicts. I didn't understand what was going on because we had an agreement about children's relocation. Everything was ready, so what was it? Was he grieving? What if he was afraid I couldn't do it? We just started living together and our family was already on the verge of divorce, and I asked him straight out why he didn't bring the kids home. The answer knocked the ground from under my feet, and Benjamin barely managed to catch me before I hit the floor. It turned out that he and his ex-wife had 5 children of their own and 3 adopted children. 8 children. 8 children were coming to us. All this time he had hidden them so as to not frighten me anymore, and now he was dying of shame at the thought that they might end up in the adoption system again. It was a nightmare. This doesn't happen in reality and certainly doesn't happen to me. While I was trying to recover, Benjamin managed to collect some things and left me. Yes! He decided to leave me and it was his own fault. He should have told the truth right away. Was I not worthy to know the truth? How angry I was then. And I didn't feel sorry for him at all. Have you ever been angry at someone instead of being sympathetic? I didn't expect to be so indifferent. I didn't know how to respond to his leaving. To raise 8 children at 18? I was not ready for my own yet, but there were already 8. I decided to let the situation run its course and take a break from everything. Every day, I forgot myself with friends, at parties, in cafes, at movies. I hadn't seen them for a long time and I missed them very much. At first, it was good because I was still so young and there were so many interests around. But after a couple of weeks, I felt a kind of emptiness and wild loneliness. Friends no longer gave me pleasure and entertainment seemed gray. I was suddenly torn off my half, and now I was incomplete. I missed Benjamin terribly, and I realized that I wanted to be with him. That same day, I stood on the doorstep of his ex-wife's house. I found the children and my husband in a terrible state. Dirt all around, mountains of unwashed dishes, leftovers in the corners. The children were dirty, uncombed, and sad. I immediately rushed to clean up and prepare food, although I did not know at first how much I needed to put cereals and salt to cook soup for 10. Benjamin was happy to see me back and tried to help me with everything. We needed to wash and iron laundry every day, not to mention classes with children, walks, and the eternal reconciliation of sisters with brothers. I was getting used to the routine of home life, but I was getting very tired. I could barely reach the pillow and fall asleep before my head touched it. Suddenly, we had a sick Lily. She was only 8 years old. She was hospitalized for several days with an allergy attack. Lily was crying so much. She asked me to stay with her because she was afraid of dying like her mother. It took me a long time to persuade her before I left. There were 7 more at home. My heart was breaking. At home, there was another problem. The older Billy, who was 14, ran away. The children told me that he was against my coming and called my father a traitor. While Benjamin was calling the police, I found Bill's notebook and his friends' numbers. I called one number after another until I found the right address. Billy was visiting a school friend. We raced there. Billy was angry and said he didn't want to see me and I didn't know how to handle a teenager who wasn't much younger than me. Then Benjamin hugged him and said that I would never replace his mother and that's not why I was in this house. We were family and should try to help each other. Thank God the words worked and the three of us returned home. But this did not bring peace to our family. The children and I got to figure each other out. They lost their mother, and their father brought home a new wife. They could be understood. But some time passed, and the younger ones called me Mom for the first time. And then, only then, did I feel that we were finally a family. Benjamin and I were over the moon. Suddenly, I felt a sharp deterioration in my health. I was sick in the morning, was tormented by weakness the whole day. My husband became concerned and made me an appointment with the doctor. The doctor said something incredible. I couldn't believe my ears and called Benjamin to the office. We were expecting twins! Twins! It turned out that our kindergarten will grow to 10 children. And you know, my husband and I are not afraid. Did you like my story? Support it with a like and subscribe to the channel.